my little bit first. So I would like to remind everyone of some of the instructions included in the remote meeting protocol. Everyone will be muted if they are asked to speak, or unmute yourself, speak, unmute yourself again when you're finished. If you have a question, press the virtual hand on the screen. The chair will invite you to speak, one person at a time. Please do not begin speaking until the chair invites you in. If you have a comment to make, you should only raise the symbol of the hand when the chair is asked for a comment. And again, you will be invited to speak, one person at a time. If for any reason a member has a cause to leave the meeting, then they must indicate to the chair before leaving. Please raise your hand or send a message on the online chat. Case law is clear. You are not allowed to vote if you haven't heard the full debate. So if your screen is freezes, but you have heard the whole debate, you may use your discretion. Or whether to vote, however, you did not hear the whole debate, you cannot vote. When it comes to the recommendations, you're invited to vote. Time the meeting schedule, please. Could I ask all officers and guests to turn off their cameras so that only elected members and the person on the screen? You should turn off your camera, microphone while you're speaking on this item, but please turn them back off again after. Could I please ask the Democratic Service to mute everyone and begin the recording referred to in the published agenda? Good afternoon and welcome to another table. Oh, it's a cabinet one. Okay, folks. Marth, all right? Right.
Yeah,
I go back to the agenda now, move my papers. Welcome to the Social Services Scrutiny Committee on the 16th of March 2021. On the agenda, apologies for absence. We haven't got any. Number 2, declaration of interest as A and B. Go back, number 3, Contact Magadu Safeguarding Annual Board Report, and I believe it's Nicola. Nick, you're on?
Yeah. Hiya, Lisa, I don't know whether there's a covering report, is it, or we just sent the full document?
No, there's a covering report, Bill. So do you want me to do the introduction, and then if Nick's got can answer any questions, then if people have got those?
Yes, please.
Okay, so unfortunately, this report was delayed because of COVID, which is sort of like my phrase of the year now. Lots of things being delayed. So this is the annual report for 2019-20. The key priorities are set out in the report. So we were looking at safeguarding children, young people and adults at risk from the impact of domestic violence, improving the way in which we communicate, engage and promote participation with communities and partner agencies. And then the third was ensuring that the transition to the new regional footprint for safeguarding is managed effectively, because as you know, Bridgend came on board then sort of that year. So in 5 of the report, you'll see the summary of the key achievements. So if I just sort of highlight some of those. So in 5.3, there was very close collaboration between Vowdress, the steering group, and the Cwmtaf Morgannwg Safeguarding Board. And that was about raising awareness for the region around domestic violence. So that was with the public, staff, care providers and third sector. So we wanted to increase their understanding and training around domestic abuse and how to prevent the escalation of risk and incidents of that. There was then Welsh Government provided a training grant for each safeguarding board, and we used that to deliver face-to-face training with school staff, and that was really positively received. Digital platforms were being used to utilise raising awareness amongst professionals and public, and how to recognise and respond to domestic abuse, including children and adults. And obviously now lots of the training we do is through a digital means, so that's continued throughout this year. University and further education colleges were invited to participate in boards training and communication subgroups, so that was really positive, and that was around raising awareness for domestic abuse again. Safeguarding Week in 2019 was focusing on tackling domestic abuse. So again, very positive, and there was lots of activities that week. There was a workshop and drop-in centres, and I think there was a theatre group as well that took part. So a lot of the areas we looked at within sort of that area, safeguarding children, young people and adults at risk from impacts of domestic abuse, we met most of those action plans, and that was really positive, you know, taken forward. For strategic priority 2, that was to improve the way in which we communicate, engage and promote participation within communities and partner agencies. So that was again about raising awareness with the public about what the work the board does, and about sort of highlighting the profile of sort of protecting and preventing abuse with adults and children. So there was a lot of media campaigns. So again, a lot of the positives around that was that we launched a new website in November 2019. There was a new Facebook account in August 2019, and there were various events around promoting awareness raising and engagement around subject of safeguarding, which is detailed in the actual report on page 20. Strategic priority 3 was ensuring the transition to the new regional footprint. And there was lots of work done around that over the last sort of 18 months, and that's continued. So the governance arrangements had to be changed with sort of new terms of reference and looking at new chairs of the board. Protocols and procedures were updated to make sure they weren't just Cumtaf, but Cumtaf Maganog. The training and learning groups, the membership of that changed in the comms, so everything included Bridgend and sort of any information we gave out. Adult practice and child practice reviews, we created one group which included also Bridgend, so really positive. Quality assurance and performance, again, terms of reference, and that included Bridgend as well, and the multi-agency safeguarding hub. So Cumtaf still has their own MASH, and Bridgend have their own MASH, and there's no plans to bring those together, but we certainly look at the governance and the learning together on those areas. The challenges for 2020, there will be no surprise what I'm going to say. The biggest challenge has been COVID-19, and that had a major impact on the board work. The board didn't meet for a few months until we were sort of up in line with sort of the digital meetings, and now we're back on track with those meetings. And some of the subgroups stepped down, and there was a different sort of structure in the fact that there were silver command meetings, and we just focused on the priorities for children and safeguarding. And in 6.2 of the report, there's an outline there of some of the key challenges that the board faced going forward. Next steps, obviously we're now coming to 2021, so we're in the process of looking at the annual report for next year. We've just had a development day last week to review the annual report from last year and look at the priorities and see what needs to continue going forward, and also to look at how COVID has impacted on us and what we can do moving forward. But it's key that safeguarding for children, young people and adults has been our priority throughout, and we've never lost focus of that. So that's been really, really important message to give across. So I'll now open up to any questions, comments if people have got any.
Do you want me to go back to Nicola? Have you got anything to say on this?
No, only to add to what Lisa said around, it was a challenging time completing this report. The end of year this relates to was March 2020, and so we sort of had to complete it, during the first phase of the pandemic, and as a result, you may have noticed that there isn't any data in there in relation to child protection and adult protection, because it wasn't available to us in time to get to include in the report. So just apologies for that, and open up to questions.
Okay, Lisa, thank you very much for that. Any questions from members? Because I read the report, and I think the coronavirus has caused a major problem for anti-social domestic abuse, and everything. How people cope with their marriage, I'll never know, because I've seen enough of it at my area. So, questions? Anybody, any questions on this? I know we're a year behind, but Ian,
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just ask Lisa, did you say then that there's two separate multi-agency hubs going on? And I was wondering, do you have any plans to bring them into one? Because I'm originally from a village where half of it is in one local authority and half of it's in another. Half in RCT and half in Bridgend. So is it the case that you're just going to run two, or might you bring them together?
Okay, so the multi-agency safeguarding hubs, Merthyr has had a joint MASH, as they call it, for the last 2 or 3 years, and that is joint with RCT, so it's RCT and Merthyr staff. So all the information goes into the one MASH for the Cwm Taff area. What will happen is, if there's obviously a referral about Merthyr, then Merthyr staff will deal with it. And equally, if RCT get the referral from their area, then RCT staff will deal with it. There is some resilience in there that you've got joint education posts, same health workers, and so, you know, but we still have some separate entities within the one MASH. The difference is Bridgend have their own MASH. So if it's a Bridgend referral, then that goes into their MASH in the police station there, rather than comes to RCT or Bridgend. There's no plans at the moment to bring those together, because I think Bridgend was quite new in setting up their MASH, and it was probably one of those things that was too difficult at the time to move forward, and something we may explore in the future. But certainly for now, for RCT and Merthyr, we have got a joint MASH and it works really well.
Ian, all right?
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Okay, Sherelle.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, ladies. It's nice to see the report. It is really well presented. I think it's very clear to go through, and there's a lot of detail in there. Lisa's already picked up my only, Nicola picked up. My only thing was the lack of data around, you know, what's actually going on within the local authority around child protection, etc. Just in terms on page 37 of the annual report, it shows a table showing the statutory duty to scrutinise local arrangements, just to see exactly who attends what meetings. On the second column, it's got presented at board. So I'm assuming that is when, for example, Merthyr Tydfil Children's Services bring something to that board for discussion or ratification or recommendation. Firstly, is that right? And my second observation on there was around Merthyr Tydfil's public protection attendance. It seems quite low with regards to the same for RCT, and I was just wondering if there was issues there, or, you know, what's the reason why we didn't have that statutory attendance at those meetings when RCT did. I appreciate Bridgend is slightly different because they came on later, but I thought the comparison between RCT was something that I would like more information on.
Do you want me to start, Lisa? Thanks for that. Yeah, the issue we have with the requirements that are set out in the legislation on the annual report, you know, the headings and the things that we have to include as a regional safeguarding board are quite prescribed, and I sort of work alongside my counterparts across Wales, and we've always had an issue with demonstrating the requirements that how do partners contribute to the work of the safeguarding board. You know, there's various ways, and one of the things that we've decided to include is attending board. Then someone said, well, you could sit there around the table and not say a word. So presenting to board would be, as you said, sort of bringing something to the table and sort of asking the board to to discuss and ratify, etc. So yeah, Merthyr Tydfil has done really well with that.
Yeah.
The issue with public protection, it has been an ongoing issue, and I can only assume it's capacity issues within Merthyr. We haven't had full engagement from public protection as far as the safeguarding board is concerned. I believe Steve Peters used to attend before his retirement. But I know, Lisa, we've been discussing, how we can sort of support that their further engagement. But I do simply think that it's been a capacity issue. There's far more people in RCT, as you're aware, sort of that are available to attend meetings than there are in Merthyr.
Yeah, definitely. So from your observation, it would just be down to capacity within our local authority. Whereas I would imagine this year public protection would be at the forefront of these meetings with the COVID pandemic, that they should be at the forefront. So have you seen a difference in recent meetings now? Because I'm conscious we go in against 2019-20 here. So have we got that engagement, that level of engagement with public protection in the local authority now, or is there still a gap there?
You're spot on. It's definitely improved as far as the subgroups of the board are concerned. So as Lisa said in her covering report, there was an interim arrangement set up where we had bronze meetings that were held in the local authorities. So there was one in Merthyr, and we had good engagement in that, especially from housing. And that has continued to a degree. So I know Susie Lewis-Abbott has been in touch recently. She's going to be attending some of our QA groups, but I don't think we've cracked it yet as far as the safeguarding board is concerned, that strategic level. But Lisa, you may have more to say on that.
Councillor Jago, it is something that I've raised at the corporate management team, because it is something that's been flagged by the board when we look at attendance on several occasions.
Okay.
It is around capacity. Like Nick said, Steve Peters used to attend when he was head of housing and covered community safety within his remit. And since he's left, then there hasn't been the capacity for any personnel to attend the board. There is, John Eyre attends, myself, Taryn and Angela, so there are 4 representatives from Merthyr, and we do feedback regularly. There is the local safeguarding reference group, and we always have a representation from public protection at that meeting. So it's just about sort of keeping that communication going. Ideally somebody would attend the board, and if there was a specific issue on an agenda, I'd make sure somebody was in attendance there.
So at least what department runs this? Is it Paul's?
Community partnerships now under Paul Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, Paul Lewis, yeah.
I know.
But also, and they're going out for a staffing to help at Alan Rhys Evans.
Yeah, a post has been advertised this week, so in theory we may, solve the problem. If we appoint to that post, then they may come to the board.
Okay.
But we want to take it for, I think, if I see Paul, I'll mention Paul, we want to take it forward because we want people there, don't we?
I'll raise it again at CMT. So.
Yeah, can you do it for us?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just an observation on page 40. I think you've got the there's a page 4. Yeah, page 40. You've got MTCBC in brackets, but I think it should be Bridgend County Borough Council on that page. Just if you can update that. It's on the heading. Can you see it?
Well, this has been out there since September last year. That's the first I've noticed. Thank you so much. Yes, we'll make sure that's amended.
And my final question is on page 45. It's in relation to, let me just scroll back to it, sorry. It's in relation to guidance received from Welsh ministers or the National Board, and it's in relation to nursery provision. So I just wanted to know where are we as a local authority with how many unregistered provisions have we got as an roughly within the local authority of Merthyr Tydfil? So preschool provision under the 2-hour rule of CIW registration, really, because it was picked up as a concern, and obviously, you know, when they're unregistered, you've got the higher concerns around safeguarding and, you know, good practice, etc. And it's certainly not that level of care that we would be looking for in a traditional Care Standards of Wales Inspectorate registered setting. So I just wanted to know where we are from our local authority perspective. How many have we got identified as unregistered provisions in Merthyr?
I'm sorry, Councillor Jager, I don't know that off the top of my head. I know I probably should. Taryn, are you aware of that? Or I can double check with Chris Hole's area and then come back to you.
Okay.
So if nobody is, Taryn, sorry, you can answer.
And it was just to say I'm not aware off the top of my head, sorry, but I can support in getting that information to yourselves.
Yeah, that would be really useful, because that would certainly be a piece of work. Perhaps it's already been identified under the local authorities like childcare sufficiency audit and play. But, you know, because it was identified in the previous report as a recommendation to look at from Welsh ministers and the national board, I think that, you know, we need the answers for that question, really. Okay, fab, thank you. That's my questions, Chair.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, Councillor Smith, I just wanted to support you and to thank Councillor Jago for raising obviously the issue around the capacity within public protection. Like Lisa, when we're at Cabinet and CMT next time, which will be next week now, I'll raise the issue of the attendance capacity. I think they are out to advert, as you said, Councillor Smith, for a community safety officer to build some additional capacity into the community safety team. So I'll also, alongside Lisa Curtis-Jones, to give you some reassurance, I'll raise the matter as well, all right?
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Anything else from members? Any questions? I can't see no one's up, so everyone must be happy. Thank you very much. Nicola, I'll see you next Thursday.
It's been a pleasure.
I'll see you next Thursday. Look after yourself. Okay, bye.
Bye.
So we go back to the agenda now, and it's adult services and children's services care association. So it's Taris.
It's going to be a double act with Taryn and Rachel Gray. So I think Taryn is the report.
No problem.
Afternoon, everybody. So today's report before scrutiny outlines the activities undertaken in support of carers within adult services and children's services. It outlines our objective and intended activities moving forward and the links to that to our regional carers strategy. I'll provide you with a general overview for young carers, and then, as Lisa said, pass over to my colleague Rachel Gray to provide an overview for adult services. The report focuses on unpaid adult carers and our young carers, who I'm sure we would all agree play an invaluable role in their family units and our wider community. As part of the regional work programme of CumTAF Social Services and Wellbeing Partnership, a new CumTAF carer strategy was developed in 2016 to replace the separate plans that had previously been in place. Working with partners across Merthyr Tydfil and Rhondda and Taff, and including carers themselves, the strategy was put in place between 2016 and 2019 and covered carers of all ages. The CumTAF Magano Carers Steering Group has met several times during 1920 to draft an updated version of the carers strategy, which would include Bridgend's input into that carers strategy given the change in regional footprint. However, unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 restrictions and the government guidance impacting on groups' ability to meet, this work remains outstanding, but I have been advised this week that there's clear plans to bring that back onto the table. In terms of young carers, the Young Carers Service within Merthyr Tydfil has been provided by Bernardo since 1997, and the service operates an open referral system accepting referrals from young carers themselves, their families and other professionals. During 2020 and 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent restrictions have placed significant pressure on our young carers. The Young Carers Service worked quickly to their credit to adapt their ways of working to ensure that we remained a consistent support for our young carers. This led to an increase in virtual working and outdoor sessions being held during the pandemic at an increased rate. There are naturally concerns that environments where young carers would normally be identified, such as in education settings, are not being facilitated by the normal route, and therefore we are aware that there may be young carers who would have been identified during these means that may not have been identified during the pandemic period. Through the work of the Welsh Government, a number of our young carers who did not have access to IT facilities have been provided with Chromebooks and SIM cards to support them having internet access. And during the first 3 quarters of this year, 118 young carers engaged with the Young Carers Service. 11 new young carers assessments were undertaken and 152 young carers support plans were reviewed. I think it's important just to note for the report that the stats in terms of what we did in the previous year were for a full year, and these numbers are just for the first 3 quarters. You'll note in the report at point 4.8 that the wellbeing reported by our young carers is lower than the previous year. However, it is positive to note that during the last quarter, there's been a considerable increase in the well-being of our young carers that they've reported, with that increase being around 50%. So in the last quarter, they reported their well-being was improved by engaging with the service by 89% of our young carers. And when we compare that to the first quarter of the year, so when pandemic restrictions first come into place, that's sat at 27%. Our young carers have continued to engage in regional and national work, including working with the Education Minister to discuss examinations during the COVID period. They've participated in the Year I Am campaign, and they're continuing to represent the Young Carers Choir in national forums. In December 2019, the Young Carers Scrutiny report we shared had a clear vision for where we wanted to be during this last year. The pandemic has created a clear barrier to us achieving the developments we had aimed for. We have needed to focus delivery on a safety model of support, and naturally the required shift from group delivery to one-to-one work, whilst necessarily has placed considerable demands on the Young Carers Service. I'm just going to pass you over now to Rachel to give an overview in terms of adult services.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Gray and I'm the Carers Officer for Adult Services. For a period of time, Merthyr Adult Services did not have a Carers Officer in place to support carers. It was recognised that we did need that service. So as of August 2020, a Carers Officer was recruited. We recognise that unpaid carers We recognise that unpaid carers are an essential role within supporting people within our community. The support they provide is varied, and a number of them provide support for people with highly complex needs. We also recognise that without the support of unpaid carers, there would be a significant increase in demand for statutory social service care. Throughout 1920, we have continued to work collaboratively with our stakeholders and third sector partners in improving recognition of carers and providing appropriate information and support to provide carers with the services they need. Our commissioned third sector partners include the Alzheimer's Society, who facilitate our dementia support group and side-by-side service, Taff Morgannwg Mind, who run the Carer Star project, and VAMPT, who have community coordinators to help carers and signpost them to the right services. Funding has also been secured with Citizens Advice Bureau to create the Cab for Carers project and Cancer Aid in Merthyr to create a project caring for cancer carers. We've also recently commissioned through funding Meaningful Care Matters to deliver specialised workshops aimed at carers living with dementia. This will look at how COVID has impacted their caring roles, and we would then be able to utilise this information to evaluate what carers who live with a dementia have and how they have managed over the pandemic period. We continue to work with Taff Morgannwg Partnership Group to oversee the implementation of the strategy, even though there has been a barrier put in place by COVID of this group meeting, but it is going to be underway this year. Work to date this year has seen a carers officer recruited to develop the understanding of what carers' needs currently are. We've contacted all of our carers that we have on record to provide support through COVID period. We've established a social media group for carers in Mythe Tydfil to share up-to-date information from a local authority and from our third sector partners. We're currently looking at reviewing our carers assessment to identify what needs to change for it to be more carer friendly. What we found was that carers, when the word assessment was mentioned, it was a barrier for them wanting to engage with that. So we're looking at making that more of a sort of carers conversation and what matters to them. We've worked with our WICAS team to identify how many carers have had carers assessments over the last year. And we are redeveloping our local authority website landing page to have more detailed information for carers. That's it from me, thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. And it was the first meeting, done well. Don't worry about us. Right then, Liz, anything else, Sarah? Anything else on it?
No, apologies to Rachel. I probably should have introduced her at the start. Rachel has been a really good sort of recruitment. She's now a new carers officer, sits in adult services, but obviously covers adults and children, and it's been a really positive step. So, and Rachel's actually pulled this report together along with help from children's services around the young carers.
Yeah, great, thank you much. On this information that you're hoping to receive after the Cora cease, but that will go away now in the summertime, will that information be fed back to the Scrutiny or social services for us to know what lessons to be learned then? I hope it never come back, fingers crossed, but you know, Italy's coming back and things are happening, so will we have that report back?
Yeah, if there's a lessons learned, certainly around carers, we can certainly feed that back. One positive is that for unpaid carers, we sometimes don't fail to recognise those, and they don't come forward, they don't want support. But what we've asked the health board to do is, so under the new criteria where unpaid carers can get the vaccine, we've asked them to put a tick box on there that their information can be passed to the local authority. So health have agreed that. So the forms that unpaid carers are now filling in, if they want to request the information is sent to us, then we can have access to that, and that will obviously help with our figures identifying who are unpaid carers. So that's a positive step, really.
Yeah, very good. I agree. Councillor Gio, are you on what you want a bit?
That's okay, Michael.
I got a crystal ball, but don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah, Lisa, that was going to be one of my questions, really, to say, first of all, do we have an idea of how many unpaid carers we have recorded? And have we seen an increase due to the fact that COVID now, you know, it's got advantages for unpaid carers to register themselves, even if it's with the GP practice as opposed to the local authority, and how we can strengthen those links, really. But yeah, so I don't know if you've got a number of how many unpaid carers we've currently got registered, and whether you've seen an increase so far yet.
Rachel, would you have that figure in front of you? I don't know what it is personally off the top of my head. And I don't necessarily know if we've seen an increase, but I know the part of the reason we wanted to recruit a carers officer was to raise awareness, so we would increase the numbers. Sorry, Rachel.
Currently, I've taken our data from our WICAS department. So the number of carers that I've got details for who have had a carers assessment since WICAS has been up and running is 180. And I have contacted quite a fair few of those carers that we've got up-to-date information for, just to see how they've managed over the COVID period and if they need any help or support as well. We've also advertised and promoted on our Facebook group in regards to the online form for carers to self-register for the vaccine. So hopefully as that disseminates down, there'll be more carers coming forward for their vaccine, and we'll be able to obtain more information as well if they tick the box on that form.
Fab. And Rachel, you talked about the carers assessment form at the moment, and the view to change that to sort of carers conversations to not make it sound so intimidating. But what will that carers assessment tell you then?
So at the moment, that carers assessment is quite a formal document, but with the revamp of the carers assessment, we're looking at co-producing with carers of what they actually need, because at the moment I think it's more centred towards the cared for, whereby we need to know what carers need, because with carers they often sort of, you'll ask them what they need and they'll tell you what the cared for need, but we need to make it more in line with carers, and for it to be for them to tell us their needs, rather than if they say they request respite, for instance, sometimes it'll be respite for the actual person rather than the carer.
Yeah, fab. Okay, that's brilliant, thank you. And in terms of the young carers, we had the number of 152, you know, and so there's quite a big cohort of children and young people who have got this role. Obviously the pandemic has had a huge impact on all families, but I think, you know, there've definitely been particular pressures on young carers due to lockdown restrictions, etc. And I was just interested to know your future plans. Have you got any plans in terms of already thought about in terms of when restrictions are lifted, what support you can provide for the young carers, and what sort of opportunities to do new things, and, you know, have trips, and, you know, just some fun things for them to look forward to? I don't know whether you've got that sort of planning done yet for pre-COVID, you know?
So optimistically, I think we've always had one eye to when we were out of restrictions for our young carers, about how we enhance their level of social interaction actually out in the real world. So just to confirm, we have secured just over £4,000 worth of funding again this year to support for them having residential activities.
Excellent.
Now, lots of our young carers don't like overnight stays. It makes them feel quite anxious, but they have extended periods of time out where they may go to Awkward or Pembroke and different things, which they always report very positively on. Equally, just before, sorry, I'm getting terrible feedback. Equally, just before the pandemic, we were fortunate enough to secure quite a substantial financial amount from ICF, which meant that we could have another full-time person within the young carers service. Now, that role is needed to be utilised during the pandemic period around doing the increased one-to-one sessions. However, the plan for the year moving forward is about increasing activity in schools so that we can identify our young carers and provide support in a different forum. So I think there's lots of really positive things on the horizon. We're just very keen for restrictions allow us to put some of those in place. However, what I will say is over the last year, young carers will have had an enhanced level of one-to-one support from the young carers service, because previously, and lots of young carers enjoyed this, but they was in group settings, whereas now there's been lots of one-to-one activity.
And Councillor Smith,
Excellent.
Hang on,
really
folks.
good. Thank you.
Okay, I got a couple of lines up now. We're going to take them in order. Minute. Gareth, you first, then Chris and Ian. All right, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thanks, Rachel, for your presentation, and welcome to your role. My question is regarding paid carers. Really, just a clarification: are carers in receipt of the carers allowance automatically notified to the local authority then, or not?
Unfortunately, they're not. I think in line with GDPR, we're unable to have that information shared with ourselves. It's very much the carers' role to identify themselves, but we are actively doing some work around how we can identify more carers, speaking with the sort of GP surgeries, trying to promote when carers come in, sharing their information with ourselves and getting the carer to come forward.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. Further question, Bill, if that's okay?
Yeah, carry on.
It's in relation to, you see within the report that unpaid carers are not coping during the lockdown and pandemic. Can you outline what sort of assistance is being put in place to assist them in with that?
We've got quite a few commission services at the moment. So where we've identified that is from where I've been contacting carers and asking them how they've been. A lot of the time carers is stating that it's due to social isolation and family members not being able to help out as they would previously. We have got our Dementia Connect service whereby they are doing phone calls to the carers. We've got our Mind Carers project as well, whereby they're making sure the carers' well-being are okay, and quite a few of our services are really sort of pushing forward on communicating with carers, whether that be sort of over the telephone or over sort of Zoom.
Yeah. Final one, Bill, if that's okay. In paragraph 7, you see the strategy is under review. Is there a sort of end date for that review taking place, or is it still open-ended?
We're meeting with our regional partners. We're hoping for these meetings to start commencing again. It'll be a virtual commence over, but we haven't got an end date as yet. But we are pushing forward on getting the new strategy outlined so that can go forward.
Yeah. And just finally, rather than come back with just a quick comment, there's some fantastic initiatives within this report. Very, very pleasing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris, all right?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I just wanted to add to what Taryn had said in terms of in response to Councillor Jago, really. I've had the pleasure over the last year to have joined a number of Zoom meetings with the young carers. Obviously, prior to COVID, they were meeting on a weekly basis at Dowlas Engine House. They're a really lovely dedicated space up there where the children and young people could do crafts. Obviously, they had the choir practice, planning for all of the trips and activities. And Sherelle will be delighted to hear, but it's Geraldine Madison who's the project coordinator for young carers.
Oh, fab.
So Geraldine, there used to be 3Gs. So you can see, you know, and Bill will know Geraldine as well. Young Carers is very much in safe hands in Merthyr Tydfil. I was delighted when Geraldine applied and got the post. So she's doing amazing work. The young carers are continuing to do the choir. They're working with the health board and some health eating initiatives. They've actually written a book of poems and raps that they're in the process of pulling together. And I've said that, and Taryn doesn't know this yet, but we would look to get printed and designed for them, for the young people to have copies to go out into all of the schools and stuff as well. So there's amazing work and support that's been provided to the young carers. I had some funding as well that I've given to them to do some healthy eating projects, so the young people are cooking on a budget and learning new skills. So there's some fantastic work, and I think maybe where there's an opportunity for us all to get together, maybe we can come and showcase Taryn some of the work of the young carers service in a bit more detail, perhaps.
Excellent.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, definitely. It really is a service that Merthyr should be very proud of, actually. And I would highly recommend, if you ever get opportunity to see the young carers choir, to take that up. They really are inspirational.
Yeah, can I say very good news, Chris, on that would you take it forward. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I know that weekends can be a difficult time for any local government service. Are you able to provide a high level of support for both children and adult carers on weekends? Would you like to tell me a little bit about that, how you manage it?
So in respect of our young carer service, if there are particular concerns or support needs over a weekend, they would be entitled to access our out-of-hours service that's facilitated via our family centre, and that operates 7 days a week from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And that can offer telephone support visits and respite.
Anything else?
I'm not aware that we've got a sort of weekend provision for adult carers if there is sort of crisis, but there is an emergency duty team whereby they be able to contact them if it was an emergency occurred and they needed that intervention from a social worker.
Right, thank you, Rachel, very much. Okay, Bill.
Okay, any more questions, members? Can I say on behalf of the committee, I think you're doing, this report is excellent. I know we're going to take it to the next step because, sorry, Deck, I didn't see your hand up.
Sorry, Bill, I just put it up late. You're probably better off ignore me anyway. I've got a really stupid question. Can you just go through some of the support that you give day to day to the young carers and to all the carers, to be honest? I know there's some list of some of the music help, you know, the activities you put on for them. Well, what are the daily help you would give to people? Like, is it mentoring and emotional support and that sort of thing? Obviously, they're not paid, but do they also get can they get financial help?
So in terms of our young carers, they're offered one-to-one sessions as frequently really as our support them, but that can happen on a daily basis if required. They're also offered group sessions that occur almost daily during the COVID period for young people who wish to engage in a group setting that day. As I alluded to earlier, we've supported in terms of access to IT facilities and then being able to access the internet as part of their educational programme. They're also discussed our young carers in our vulnerable learners panel to make sure that there are professionals continually in contact and that we're sharing information in a robust manner. There's also really practical support in place, so should they be caring for somebody who's struggling to access their medication or should they need support in terms of shopping and such, then that has been provided during the COVID period. Obviously, if the support pertains to the person that they are caring for needing additional services, then that would be a referral into adult services to look at that support. But the range of activities that they engage in can be from very practical emotional support over Zoom, or it can be arts and crafts, choir practice, engaging on a national forum to be able to share their views. So it really is very diverse.
Lovely. Thank you, Taryn. And that's it, Bill. Top. Bill, you're on mute.
I see the moment. I have to book a room somewhere. Can I say thank you much for all the work you're doing. Richard, thank you, because it's the first time you get used to us. You know. So we just there to ask. We just there to ask questions and find out how we can improve the service. So I'm going to say thank you very much. Appreciate it. Lisa, all right?
Thank you very much.
All right. So we'll go back on the next agenda. Yes, social services recovery transform. It was this?
It is, it's me, and I'm hoping Kat can help me with any questions you may have. Unfortunately, Angela couldn't be here because she's on leave. You asked me to look at the Recovery Transformation Improvement Plan to give you an update following the last report. Some of it is based on, we gave you some feedback about how COVID had impacted on us back in September. So this is an update from that period. So as you know, the Improvement Board came in 18 months ago. There was a clear plan in place about how we'd sort of look at sustainability moving forward. The plan has now sort of moved into a recovery plan, so post-COVID. and there was some delay in some of the improvement areas we were looking at. Obviously, because of the pandemic, that had to take our the priority day to day. The last year has been very difficult. We're probably going to see higher demand. The expectation is that we're going to see, I mean, they're calling it a tsunami of children's referrals. And I went to a meeting last week with directors when they were also talking about a similar issue in adult services come September, where with winter pressures and the modelling that's coming in with people recovering from COVID and needing reablement and adult services, that we're going to be expecting equally, huge pressures in adult services. They also think there'll be an increase in residential care, whereas in the last couple of years we've seen a huge reduction in that. So it looks like, we will have to look at, services moving forward. So the report set out sort of obviously does the usual sort of where we were. So like I've said, over the last year, we have prioritised safeguarding. Nobody's been missed. We've, dealt with those as a priority, and vulnerable adults and children in our community have been looked after when we've needed to. Prior to the pandemic, we had a very clear improvement journey. Part of that was in some of the regional work we were doing as well, and there was some really positive work about to start. And you'll be aware of some of the work we were doing around the building work at Tigurnos and moving. There's bedding up to the empty wing there, and there was a lot of positive work going on. We were redeveloping day services, certainly for dementia care and things like that. Where we are now, what we've started to do now is start thinking about the recovery. So regional working recommenced prior to Christmas. So that now is back up and running. So we're now looking at projects and moving forward for 21-22 and looking at sort of funding streams and how that's going to work with ICF and transformation. So that's really positive. Welsh Government were very supportive throughout the last year, and there's been hardship funding, and that's helped certainly with some of the care home capacity. So they've paid for voids and they've helped with sort of agency working costs. And nobody has suffered necessarily, and companies haven't gone bust so far. We've been told that funding is going to continue certainly into the first quarter of 21-22. So that's really positive. But there's plans in place about how we step back from that and how we, help various agencies and providers. The number of staff. So going back probably in the last couple of months, there were a lot of staff having to isolate because they'd come into contact with somebody who was positive of COVID, or whether they had symptoms. That is not so much of an issue at the present time. I mean, I touch wood every day. We're in a really good position staffing wise. Lots of staff who did get it have recovered. We haven't got staff, certainly in social services, who are suffering longer term impact, although I am aware of 1 or 2 staff who are still impacted by it in other areas of the council. So that's been positive. We're rolling out now the lateral flow tests. So staff within the care homes, although have been tested quite regularly throughout the last, I would say 9 months when things got better, dom care staff and now social workers can access lateral flow tests. And that's something that's going to be rolled out to visitors as well in the care homes following Mark Drakeford's announcement last Friday that visiting to care homes can be allowed. Referrals across adults and services and children, we've started to see an increase. What I would say is that the numbers coming in are probably more complex. So whereas in the past some of those might have gone to early help hub or preventative services across adults and children, we're now seeing quite high level complex child protection and adult protection coming through, and we'll probably see more of that as time goes on. Where we want to be then is no doubt we want to be an excellent service to provide service to the public. We want to be resilient in future, and that's certainly one of our strap lines for the improvement plan, being resilient and financially viable. We want to continue to improve our services and change and adapt, when required. And I think over the last year we have done that. We work very differently now in the sense of that, children are being seen, albeit sometimes on screen. Children are now attending their review meetings, which is really positive, and they're more comfortable doing that on screen than they are face to face. and that, you know, that's been a positive for certainly some of our CLAR reviews. Assessments and reviews are taking place in adult services, sometimes remotely, and that's sometimes by a phone call, or if, you know, people got the means on FaceTime and things. That's more of a challenge, I guess, with older adults who have not got access to technology, but we have moved some of our reviews on, which is positive. What we need to do next, we've obviously got a very clear plan about recovering from the pandemic, and we've got clear timescales now in place to revisit some of our improvement plan. There are various projects, task and finish groups set up to look at how we work with partners and how we deal with the growing demand. So the improvement board for March, which is I think next week, they're going to focus on children's services this time and look at how we're going to cope with our extra demand coming into children's services. And we've got a plan how we'll do that corporately with all various sectors, with housing, the wellbeing area, and different sections. We've recruited an extra social worker into the adult mental health team. That's been supported, and we've gone out to advert now. What we are seeing is a huge demand in mental health services as a result of COVID, and we think that will increase as we move forward. And they need to do, you know, they need a social worker who can do the adult mental health assessments. At the moment, Alison, the team manager, is having to step up and sort of do some of those assessments herself. The Family First, that moved across to the structure into children's services. So that's really positive from a preventative point of view, and that happened in January. And a new principal officer has been appointed in adult services, and that was an area that had been picked up by CIW in the past in their inspections around capacity in adult services. So in the last year, we've now recruited an extra safeguarding adult services officer, and on Friday we were successful in appointing a new principal officer into adult services. So hopefully that will be a great asset into the service. Point 8 of the report outlines the recovery and transformation improvement plan itself, and 8.2 looks at the areas that we have been able to proceed on, and I won't go through that in detail, but I'm happy to answer questions. Some of the work, I will say, was delayed from a capital point of view. So whereas we'd had funding to improve the day services at Keir Hardy, some of that work, which was, I think, supposed to finish some months ago, is going to be carried over into 21-22, only for a short period, because we have now moved some of that work on. But we've had to move some of the finances for that because there was no building work taking place very early on, sort of March last year in the pandemic. Lisbine still hasn't moved up to Tigurnos, so there's quite a delay there. And again, that's because of the position of the care homes, not allowing visitors, builders not being able to go in and finish some of the last minute work off. So it's been sort of something we just couldn't control really. It hasn't impacted on finances at all. And obviously the people within Lisbine have understood that, you know, they weren't moving yet. But hopefully that will happen now over the next couple of months, because that work is coming to an end. We've made great strides sort of around advocacy and support for carers, and reports have come to Scrutiny around that. So you've seen some of that work, and we're going to start looking now at extra care housing and how we progress with that. So there is a plan in place. We want to open an extra care facility, and that's something that's on our long-term sort of recovery plan. The details are there in the report. Budget, we're in pretty good position at the moment. At the end of the year, we're looking to show an underspend. Part of that is because some people haven't wanted services like dom care because they don't want people into their house, and they want services in a different way. And that's certainly something we're going to have to look at as we move forward. And that was part of the improvement plan anyway, looking at how we can offer services in a different way. And by default, really, some of that's happened this year. So it's about building on that and continuing that journey. We think, sadly, that COVID will be part of our lives for a long time, and it's not going to disappear. The vaccine programme has moved at pace, so really positive. All the frontline staff who wanted a vaccine have had it, and the second vaccines have been rolled out in the last week or two for the frontline workers and our care homes. So we're in a pretty good position at the moment. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Liz, thank you very much. A very excellent report. First question, as I say, how many hours staff haven't been at the job?
I'm only aware of a handful who've refused to have the jab. Some have because they've listened to the conspiracy theories online, shall I say. But that is only one or two. Most people have taken it up. I'm not aware of large numbers. Obviously, the ones in the care homes, if they've had COVID, they couldn't have the vaccine. They had to wait for a month gap. So those who have refused it first time round, they've been offered it again now. You're on mute, Councillor Smith.
Any questions from members? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got my hand up, Chair.
Right, sorry, the sun's in my eyes. I'm blind here. I'm struggling to see.
No worries.
Right, sorry.
Okay.
Go on.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. It's very detailed and it does give us a really good flavour of where we're at really. I do agree in terms of preempting what's going to happen in the future. Undoubtedly, there is going to be an influx in the need for mental health support across the whole spectrum within Merthyr Tydfil. So I was just interested to see whether or not the development of a mental health pathway is something that you'll be looking at to go across the spectrum, really. So what would be really useful for me as a councillor, and I'm sure for many others, and obviously professionals within the local authority, is if we could have a clear mental health support pathway that could identify from perinatal mental health to parent and infant mental health, and then up to adult mental health, and what support is available for all of those areas. I think that would be a really good starting point, really, to see exactly what support is out there, and to identify where there's potential gaps that we need to fill moving forward throughout the year, because as everybody knows, the importance of health and well-being and positive mental health is the foundation to being fit and healthy and looking after your children and doing everything that you need to do in life, having a good education, etc. So I think, as a priority, it would be really useful from my perspective to see a full mental health support pathway for the local authority moving forward. I don't know if you want to come back on anything with regards to that, but I've just got one extra point in terms of the support, in terms of what we do next. Item 7.5 says that the head of children's services is taking responsibility for families first, now looking to improve areas of preventative work. And I think that's where you're going to see lots of the emerging needs coming out within the next year as well. I know from a children and communities grant perspective, Welsh Government have been putting offers of hundreds of thousands on the table over the last couple of weeks. Appreciate it's the end of the financial year, but I was just wondering if Merthyr councillors picked up on that opportunity and had additional funding for some preventative work and family resources to move into next year, really, which would aid the sustainability and the financial pressures within preventative services as well. Thank you.
There's two areas there then, Councillor Jago. So the mental health pathway is certainly something we're looking at. There are various groups at the moment, but unfortunately they're split between adults and children, so we'll have to bring it together as one pathway. I'm on, and Sue Walker, the education officer, sits on a vulnerable young people and children's group with Welsh Government, and they are now mapping out mental health supports from prenatal all the way through to sort of teenagers at 18, mental health, and that's something that's going to be rolled out. So local authorities will pick up that work when that comes through, and we've been meeting now throughout the pandemic, so that the work is moving on now into recovery and what we can do to sort of help children from a young age onwards, including babies who are, you know, haven't socialised for the last year, and seeing people with masks, and, you know, how we cope with that with speech and language and everything. There's a mental health partnership meeting that sits with Cwmtaf Maganog, and they're looking at adult and children mental health. So we'll have something that we can roll out and use locally as well as regionally. So it's likely it's something we'll pick up from sort of, and everybody will use the same in Cwmtaf Maganog, so that'll be really positive. From the point of view of funding, yeah, you're right, we've had lots of money given to us over the last couple of months, which is probably why we've underspent so much, because a lot of the grants have had to be spent quite quickly and before the end of the financial year, and they've had set criteria, which has obviously impacted on our core money then, which we haven't sort of necessarily spent. We've claimed for everything that we can, and I know sort of Chris Hall's area, there's been lots of stuff gone into sort of communities as well and youth services, and we're very keen to explore that. I think adult services have had more monies and grants over the last year because of the impact on care homes, and it's something we've raised with Welsh Government to say there should be more funding available to children's services, and we are hopeful that that will happen and continue post April 21. We did have some funding around family group conference and that sort of area, which we've, you know, utilised, and that's been used, and we've brought in services and resources like you've said, so we front loaded some of the things we need for next year. Tara, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that we have really maximised the grants as much as we possibly could. Just to share really that I attended the emotional health and wellbeing subgroup this morning that spoke about building in a pathway for young people around their emotional health. Equally, there will be a Cwmtaf Maganog rollout of an app that's called Cwth that will go live on the 12th of April. And what that app will do is a young person can anonymously go on there, but give some very basic information in respect of themselves, nothing in terms of detail for them to be identified. And then they can either go through the services are available in their local area to support their emotional health and well-being, or they can join a virtual queue to access a counselling service. And we'd advise today, as part of the app, then there's roughly a 15 to 30 minute wait, and then they have a virtual discussion via kind of text with a counsellor who can support them immediately. So I think that's going to be a really interesting rollout action. I think there'll be lots of learning that we'll be able to carry forward from that, and significantly will really support us with a number of cases I think that we will see coming forward out of lockdown. Equally, there are a number of local authorities that already have that app and have reported very positive outcomes as a consequence.
Okay. Okay, Ian, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Lisa and Taryn. I haven't so much got a question, but just a quick comment. I'm very pleased that you've been able to get into a position to address some of the capacity issues to give you a better chance for the future. Now, we've had a good settlement this year. These initiatives are going to require ongoing support from the Welsh Government, and I'm hoping and I'm confident that they will provide it. Thank you, Chair.
Ian, thank you very much. Any more questions, members? Chris?
Thank you, Bill. I just wanted to follow on really in terms of what Taryn and Lisa have said. Some members will know that I am going to be approved as the new chair of the Regional Partnership Board for Cwmtaf Maganog at the board's meeting on Thursday. So I'm hoping that can only be a good thing for Merthyr Tydfil, but I'm really keen that we galvanise the support, you know, to all community members, you know, Shirley talking about that perinatal, that pre-birth support, right through to children, young people, right through to older people in terms of the loneliness and isolation that's been impacted them due to COVID. Children and young people's mental health, everybody's mental health, it's going to be a priority for me, but also linking that across with the Public Service Board as well. So that's one of the things in my role as new chair, you know, regional working across CTM, strengthening that, joining the dots and developing a sustainability plan, but making sure there's a stronger link, Bill, really, between the Regional Partnership Board and the Public Service Board is really, really important. But I have some exciting news to share with the committee this afternoon that Merthyr Tydfil, we've been working over the last year, really, in and out of COVID, but Merthyr Tydfil has been chosen as one of 6 communities in the UK, the only community in Wales to work with the Lloyds Banking Foundation over it's likely to be a 10-year programme. There's 2 parts to it. One is about developing organisational resilience for third and community sector organisations in Merthyr to be more sustainable. So that's working with VAMPT. The second part of the programme then is a systems change and cultural change programme with public sector and third sector. And the theme that we have chosen, all of the partners in Merthyr with Lloyds Bank, is children and people's mental health. So there's going to be a real strong focus. I think out of all the communities in Wales, I think Merthyr's in a really good, strong place to move forward to recovery and supporting all of our residents, but in particular children and young people. It's exciting times, and I think, Chair, what we'll need to do is keep Scrutiny Committee closely updated on that work and get you involved when it's appropriate.
It's fantastic. Thanks for that, Chris.
Chris, it's excellent news, that is. I support that to keep us in the link. We've got to be kept in the link. But the other part is the public service boards and everything else. Can they work with the local authorities? Because we've had this debate before. Public service board discuss certain things in the county borough and we're not fed back. So can you, if you sit as a chair, can you put that forward to feed information back to us?
Absolutely. Well, I think, Chair, what it would be really good to do is, I think I've chatted to Taryn, Lisa and Angela about getting a presentation to you on the work of the Regional Partnership Board now start of the financial year. We'll get a members workshop like we did with Taryn, but I'm more than happy for, you know, myself as the chair of the RPB and chair of the PSB to be invited to Scrutiny to ask any questions and give a report on the work that we do, no problem.
Yeah, we want that fed back because I've had this argument before other people, they make comments, we know nothing about it. You know, and it's a bit unfair. Sorry, Councillor Gio? No? Sharon, do you hand up? Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm done.
You're done. Oh, fair enough. Right. Any more comments? Everybody happy? Please can I say excellent, thank you much, excellent report, information fed back. I think it's great. I think what you've done, to be honest, it's been a year today, innit? That's the same because of the Cheltenham races. And what we've done in a year, how we changed working practices, how we changed things that we never thought we'd done. It's been brilliant. And we're going to keep on going, haven't we? You know, whoever thought we'd be around the table talking about this?
I know, it's been a strange year, and I think people are starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel now, whereas a couple of months ago they was thinking there was no end in sight. But I mean, my concern is staff are worn out. You know, they need to have a break, and you know.
Yeah, but again, you're afraid to go anyway. You can't go to Italy. You know, so all of these people are afraid, aren't they?
I just take the dog around the block, and then
I go down the lake. I do talk to the ducks in the morning. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. This is excellent. Tell the staff thank you very much. I do appreciate all the work they've done. You and Taris, thank you very much. So we go back to the agenda now, and it's the forward work program. We've got everybody happy with the work program. Yeah. I've got no scrutiny referrals. Anybody got anybody scrutiny referrals? No. The action and evaluation of the meeting, I think, is I think we learned a lot today, what we've done in the past and what we were going to go forward. Because the officers at work round we said earlier on, everything is changing. And now they're thinking, everybody's thinking how can we improve it the following year. And they're going to work in a year in advance. I know it's hard for social services, but that's the way we're going to do it. Technology got to come in, and we're going to work really hard with it. So, any comments? Everybody happy? And then no other business for me, no other business, nobody else. And I say thank you much. I thank you much for your attendance, and look, keep safe.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye.
Bye.
All the best.
Ta-ra.